Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. This is Harry Brelsford from SMB Nation with our weekly webinar. So it's Thursday at 10 a.m. on the West Coast. I understand we're deep into the Germany versus USA soccer game, so you are forgiven if you have that on your TV on ESPN in the background while you watch this important webinar. I completely understand. Unfortunately, I can't multitask that well, so I'm going to have to watch the replay a little bit later, but it is quite a big day with the FIFA World Cup. It's 3 a.m. in Sydney because we have a special guest from Sydney, Australia, so appreciate him pulling the short straw to participate with us. A little bit of housekeeping. Use the chat feature to ask your questions, as always. Next week, July 3rd, we do not have a webinar scheduled because it's a major USA holiday. So enjoy the 4th of July weekend. And without further ado, why don't we just jump right into it. So the conversation today is investing forward with the fall conference. Fall conference theme is Office 365 Nation. And very quickly, we may have a slightly new audience today. So very quickly, again, my name is Harry Brelsford from SMB Nation, a career as an SMB IT pro. Wrote a bunch of books on SMB topics, including Small Business Server. And I'm starting to get that twitch again that maybe I need to do something on Office 365. It'll probably be a much shorter book. That part of the book business has changed. And I'm a frequent speaker at industry conferences. In fact, I'll be at WPC in about 3 weeks in Washington, D.C. So contact me offline if you're going to be there. We're going to hold our annual beer fest on Sunday, July 13th in Washington, D.C., so be sure to join us. We are also joined by Melanie Goss. And Melanie, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Thanks so much, Harry, and welcome everyone, and thanks so much again for being a part of this. So a little bit about me. I am president of CenterPoint Solution, which is a combination of a training and SharePoint consulting firm, but I am also known as the Microsoft Princess. That is my official nickname, as being an expert across the platforms relating to Microsoft products. I have been an expert in Microsoft products, generally speaking, since 1998, and in the Microsoft world, I'm a combination between the information worker and the technology specialist that works across all of the platforms and understanding all the products. In total, since 1998, I have worked with and trained over 1 million people. I am the one that wrote the Microsoft courseware book for Office 365 for Microsoft. In my personal world here with CenterPoint Solution, we are considered SMB champ resellers for Microsoft Office 365, and you'll find my reference guides available in multiple retailers across the world, including Amazon. And that's it for me, Harry.
Oh, okay. And where can people find your radio show? What's the URL?
Absolutely. So you can find it on MicrosoftPrincess.com. It is syndicated worldwide. We currently have over 300,000 listeners every single week learning about Microsoft products and helping make business decisions, all through MicrosoftPrincess.com.
Boy, those are real numbers. So, hey, thanks for joining us. I know you're busy. Now, I think today, are you coming to us from the East Coast today?
I am just outside of Boston today for you.
Okay, great. Once again, for those of you not familiar with SMB Nation, we grew up with you in the community, primarily surrounding Small Business Server. But quite frankly, we're evolving and expanding to have a conversation about Office 365, and we'll talk more about that. But a little bit of our background on the slide. You will receive the slide deck, by the way. So let's jump right into it. So, you know, Melanie, I've kind of copped an attitude this last year, and I guess it is kind of coming out of a little bit of frustration, but a little bit more optimism, and it's just driving me crazy. By the way, Robert Crane from Sydney, sir, introduce yourself before I get into my frustration and optimism, because you're part of it.
I don't want to hold you back, Harry. I was quite willing to listen there. So, yes, my name is Robert Crane. As you can tell from my accent, I actually live in the future down here in Sydney, Australia. I've spoken at a number of Harry's conferences. I started out in life doing SBS, and then around 2008 moved into the online world. basically was the first Microsoft online partner in Australia, selling BPODs. From there, I've done a number of books and have an active blog, and also am an Office 365 MVP. So I spend most of my day in and out of Office 365 helping customers and also helping resellers. And the big focus that I have on Office 365 these days is around SharePoint. Generally, certainly do it all, but love SharePoint to death. So that's me in a nutshell, Harry.
Great. I know people can find you up on Amazon, your works. And then, Robert, what's a simple URL to maybe find your blog or find out more about you?
Yep, I live at CIAOPS, so CIAOps.com. Me and the NSA have got you covered, so don't worry.
Okay, super. And then, Dave, I'll hold off on your introduction until we get to your part of the presentation so we can do it properly. But back to my frustration and optimism, and everyone on this call I've had this talk with, that we are in a really disruptive, transitory, if not chaotic period. And it's boy, Robert, you and I've talked ad nauseum about, it's just frustrating to see individuals in our community are kind of in a purgatory, deer in the headlight view. They're stuck, and sometimes it's even worse. Sometimes they even want to kind of block our efforts to be efficient in moving forward. They'd rather kind of debate than get the show on the road. Robert, when I was on my 30-country tour this spring and I spent some time in Sydney, we had these kind of talks, and you always tend to summarize it better. And you see it with your Sydney user group. I mean, it's just one of those times. Is that a fair statement?
I think we're seeing an inflection point. What we're seeing is a change in the technology landscape. I think for a lot of resellers, they have started off in their own business. They've gone out and they've been the most knowledgeable person around. They've been able to solve all the computer problems, and then this thing called the interweb has turned up, and things like search engines have diminished that ability for a lot of them. The competition is much easier, and becoming a distinct business has become harder and harder. So they've gone down the MSP business, and that's great, and that's worked for a lot of people, but that relies on volume more and more every day. And all of a sudden, the game's, I suppose, been changed a bit underneath them, and they're struggling on what to do. So they need to focus and retrain, and that's where I think a lot of them have struggled. They've been able to take their natural skill and ability to the market, but now they've really got to relearn the product. And I think the big jump is that everybody knows the basics, but you know what? Products like Office 365 and web-based applications are now enterprise features and functionality, and really that's going to take a bit of relearning. However, that also is a huge amount of opportunity to go out there and do, because it's just so broad and there's such a big demand for it.
Yep. And folks, shout out to the Million Mile Tour. I've been calling the last year the Million Mile Tour, and I didn't say it would happen in a year, but if you combine the MCC tour for XP migrations and the spring tour on Office 365, we're just bumping up on 200,000 miles. So it's going to take a little while, but stick with me. We're going to hit 1 million miles. So a little bit of facts on the Office 365 community, and love that my panelists pitch in if you know even more evidence. So selling more than 2 licenses a minute, in fact, significantly more, because it's selling over 2 million licenses a quarter. And you can do some web calculators to see what that looks like. Office 365 is the fastest growing product of Microsoft's history, fastest to hit $1 billion in sales, and analysts are reporting a run rate for over $3 billion in sales. So Melanie, Robert, and Dave, any other evidence you're aware of that shows the momentum? This is what I'm aware of today.
I think what I'm seeing, Harry, is from a customer point of view, it's just everywhere. All customers are coming to me all the time because they want this product, they want it up and running, they need the features. And not only are they purchasing just the basics, they're going project online, they're going CRM online, and they're growing their business with these tools. So that's the evidence that I see.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Melanie, yeah, Melanie, go ahead. What are you hearing out there?
Sure. Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of the same information. However, I'm just going to take one step back to last year. There was an IDC study that was released, and one of the wonderful things coming from, a partner community and a technical side for implementation is that this IDC study said that 3 of 4 customers are choosing partners to do their implementations. So I'm pointing that out because in just looking at your facts, Harry, that you have here, if 3 of 4 customers are using partners for their implementation, and we're seeing what the facts are here for Office 365 in sales, it's a huge growth opportunity for us from the partner community and from the technical side to be able to implement them and have a revenue stream for the services and implementing it, knowing that there's this giant pool of people that want to use us based on this IDC study from last year.
Yeah, absolutely. We went through a very brief moment in the SBS era where there was some messaging, and this was early on. It would have been 98, very briefly, where it was just add water. So Mr. and Mrs. Customer, just add water to SBS, and it'll be a little chia pet and grow on its very own. And that lasted about 6 minutes, that line of reasoning, because it became very clear Small Business Server was a partner endeavor, and I would offer the same with 365. You're going to need talented IT pros right there with you if you're the customer. Tell you what, let's keep this party going. So we're going to talk about what is Office 365, and I like to frame it up this way, that it's the front office and the back office. And very briefly, in the, I think it was the SBS 2000 time frame, it was some time ago, we actually had a SKU that had Microsoft Office and Small Business Server in the same large box. This goes back to an era where software boxes were anywhere from 1 to 3 feet long with printed thick manuals. And we actually did that. We actually said, what if you combine front office with back office? And they called it back office back at the time. In fact, it must have been SPS 4.5. And what do you know? This is essentially my view of the world with 365, is they've combined the they've combined the 2 products with the Office Pro and then the back office functionality. Both of two of my guests on the phone are niched on SharePoint, so we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Then we have the hybrid scenario. So lost in the conversation sometime is the fact that there is a middle-of-the-road solution, and that is to have an on-prem server be an essential server to perform on-premises activities. And so that could very well be, in our case, for example, running QuickBooks, because QuickBooks just hasn't proven itself to be an online solution, and the Citrix receiver solution to a hosted location is a little frustrating. And then Office 365 down in the SMB space has been called the new SBS. And Robert, I think you were using some of that language in my workshop in Sydney. Maybe if you want to expand on that.
Well, I think what we're seeing, Harry, obviously, is that customers need the same base products. They need Exchange. They need things to do file sharing and saving. They need their communications products. But again, what we're looking and finding is that they want the same tools as the enterprise. So, for example, they're wanting the high-end SharePoint, which gives you access services, Visio services, all that functionality. And more I was seeing that customers were requesting this and wanting to scale up to the enterprise features, but unfortunately it was cost prohibitive. It was just too expensive to go to the enterprise version. So now with Office 365, it's basically utility. They can buy what they want. They can generally mix and match, and they can get all those features. And I think that's what's drawing a lot of customers to it. There's now no more limitations. They basically pay for what they get. And we're seeing the sort of the dawn of the utility computing and the ability for someone like Microsoft to take all their software products they have on premise, roll them into the cloud, and then give you that integration feature. So if you want to add Project Online, just a few extra dollars a month. If you want Windows Azure to to run a WordPress site or to do something in Linux or maybe even host that QuickBooks thing, you can do that. So there's certainly lots and lots of opportunity, and again, Microsoft is very focused on bringing this product into the market. And I think in the background too, it may have had some mixed messages for resellers, but now I think it is getting that message correct. And with the change in management, it would seem that they've got their mojo back, and there's a lot of positive behind it. So I think that's why it's a great opportunity to start getting on the bandwagon.
Sure. And Melanie, with your weekly radio show, your involvement with the different trade associations, the IAMCP, and your attendance at WPC, is the server alive and kicking in an Office 365 scenario? What are you hearing out there?
Well, I think what we're seeing is a lot of hybrid solutions. So there is still a time and place for working with server, and I think from the direction of Microsoft marketing and messaging, they've still made it very clear that the server isn't going away. From a time-to-market standpoint and from a feature function capability, it's great to be able to get onto a cloud environment. However, there are still situations where we need to transition over a point in time from a server environment to a cloud environment, hence the hybrid approach. There might be times where we're in a situation where, because of data compliance, we may have to keep it, because if for some reason the discovery is made in the cloud, the laws regarding the cloud management versus an on-prem management are different, and depending on your industry, you may still need to be on-prem. So there is still a rationale for keeping a server. There's less of a rationale today than there was 10 years ago for the cloud. So the direction, I think, in general, is to move toward the cloud. But to answer today, in today's age, is there still an opportunity to use a server? Yes, but the amount of time that we would use it, I think, is statistically a little bit less based on the ability to go to the cloud in a secure and safe way.
Super. And then there's actually a fourth button that I didn't put on because I'm saving that for a little bit later, but it's an ISV platform. It's a development platform, and a little bit later on we'll introduce Dave Walther properly and talk about Office 365 in terms of it being not only a development platform but a development opportunity. So we're going to keep moving along. So we have demand drivers, and I'm not saying this is all inclusive, so maybe our panelists can be thinking of what I missed, but here's what I'm seeing, is that there is a chance to capitalize now, and I would offer the next couple of years on the end-of-support messaging. The new end-of-support conversation is Windows Server 2003. We certainly know the Windows XP end-of-support messaging, but that's still a completely valid message because a lot of people didn't start even thinking about it till April 8th. What do you know? Office 2003 has an end-of-support deadline, and we're talking about Office 365. We have the outright end-of-life, a small business server. We have an economic recovery underway, regardless of how tepid it feels down on Main Street. Balance sheets are healing, and if I don't know, I'm finally feeling a little bit richer this summer after about 6 years. So I'm going to go Melanie, I'm going to go have fun where I can find it out at WPC in DC. It's been a couple years since I've had fun, so hang on fast.
All right.
We have the technology shift, overused word, paradigm shift. You've heard me talk about a shift in the supply curve, but this is a change in technology fundamentally, and so that is a demand driver. And then finally, I'd say just the new business model. Robert, you were alluding to it a little bit about pay what you eat, essentially, with OpEx versus CapEx. Whole other conversation. And then I would offer the mobility lifestyle. So, Melanie, I'll start with you first. Are you hearing any other demand drivers, or am I missing anything here? Political rhetoric. There's got to be something.
Well, everything that you're saying, yes, this is a driving factor. And the question really becomes from a planning perspective. Are you ready to invest that much money in infrastructure? Because really, that's what people are looking at from what I'm seeing right now. People are coming to me and going, can you give me a quote for servers? And when you give them a quote for servers and they look at what their CapEx number or their cap number is, they're going to come back and they're saying to me, wow, is there any way to reduce this? And so, yes, we can look at financing plans for you, or we can look at a more opportunity approach of moving people to a cloud as they're looking at their planning. And, yes, there is an economic recovery, but at least in my case, I'm still seeing a lot of pushback where people will put money in their budget, and then when the time comes, they come to me and they say, wow, that's still a really big number that I'm going to have to eat. What can we do about this to smooth it out? And it turns out that we look at different options. In a cloud environment, for example, I don't have to worry so much about load balancing, planning out for architecture, certain number of servers, making sure we have redundant backup in place, those kind of things. It's still important to look at that as a solution when you're going to the cloud, but the point is, from the beginning, the total cost of infrastructure from a planning standpoint and an architecture standpoint can be reduced just because you're looking at a cloud environment instead. So in general, yes, in my opinion, there is an economic recovery. However, at least from my own experience, I'm seeing from the customer side, they're looking at a way to still smooth out the total amount in aggregate that they're going to pay as they're planning to go onto these new platforms.
Yeah, no, the predictability is great. Tell you what, Robert, I'm going to put you on hold for a second. We'll keep moving because I want to make sure we get through the whole conversation today, so I'll call on you on another matter. Basically, guys, just reiterating, this is a slide from the XP Migration Tour about Detour Ahead. What do I do now? And what we're seeing is part of this motion, so the disruption going on in our field. What we're seeing is new device purchases in excess of 90% because of the shift in the type of devices we work with and people really questioning if they want to do an in-place upgrade on a desktop operating system. There's certainly a very strong conversation surrounding Windows 7, but here's the thing about 8, and guys, I've been around the world on this one because 8.1 was part of the Get Modern tour this spring. Darn it, if you can just get people to stop and stop talking and listen and use Windows 8.1 for a day with a touch device and a Windows phone, it sells itself. And Melanie, I'll call on you first, but I'm sorry to get hostile, but it's so frustrating. And then once people use it, some of the biggest 8 haters are now 8 lovers. I mean, it's just unbelievable. What's your experience, Melanie?
Yeah, I'm seeing that too. And in fact, just a funny story last week, very quickly, is that I had someone, it's a client of mine, and they're part of a negotiation company, and they're one of the largest in the world. And the president of the company I saw last week, and he said, so I finally upgraded. I said, and? He goes, and I don't like it. And I said, what do you mean you don't like it? And he goes, well, I had Windows 7. I said, I know. And he goes, I'm having a hard time finding stuff, but I like the swipe part. I said, okay, well, that's good. So I sat with him for 5 minutes, showed him some of the basics, and then I saw him actually the next day because we had a 2-day thing. And he came up to me and he said, so I played around with it last night, and now I love it. I said, really? You really love it? And he goes, yeah, I really like it. I don't just like the swipe part anymore. I love everything. Thank you. So it is a little bit of a learning curve for people to get there, but once they get there, I'm completely with you that they do like it better.
Yeah, and you know who I found to be the biggest converter or advocate is represented by Mariana, my staff, diehard Macintosh user. She has tried every which way to use the Macintosh for her day job. We as part of the tour, we got her a touch device, 8.1 from Lenovo, and in her words, the Microsoft caught up. In her words, she's like, I'm cool. They caught up. And there you have it. Folks, the new Office version, so on-prem 13 Pro or 365, what we're talking about. Bottom line is simplify the choices. We'll keep moving right along. Little dancing screen. There we go. Fall conference. So we're getting to the meat and potatoes now, folks. So, here's the deal, is that with the survey work I've done, I'm going to call it qualitative surveying, by doing these workshops in a variety of different regions. Office 365 has the big mo. It's got the momentum, and it's really at one of those points where we need to come together as a community, much like we did 10 plus years ago with the original SMB Nation conference surrounding Small Business Server. Get to know each other, collaborate, work together, share, help each other out. I miss those days, and they're back. Talk more about that. It's September 26th through 28th at Microsoft Redmond in the Conference Center, world class. And it's for IT pros. It has business and technical tracks. And you can visit, and we'll definitely follow up with you, but go to fall2014.smbnation.com. And that's kind of the sort of the billboard for the conference. Let's go a little bit deeper on it. Conference overview. So here we are. More questions than answers. To me, that's what a great conference is. And with all due respect, if we put on a conference with that featured NetWare or MS-DOS or NT, we have more answers than questions at that point. So we think we're back in balance, that we have more questions than answers to add extreme value at the conference. Capitalize on the disruption that we have in our space right now. Be there at the start. I mean, so many people have said, boy, I wish I had been there at the beginning with SBS or whatever whatever their niche was. Guys, I think we can all agree you have to reinvent yourself every decade. That's a truism. And I'm predicting, and this is where I'll go to Robert, I'm predicting it's going to be a 10-year run. So that's a personal opinion. Robert, what kind of duration do you think we're seeing on this 365?
Well, I think what you're going to see, Harry, is a complete differentiation. Before, we were used to a 3-year cycle where we basically take the fire hose and drink it every 3 years, and then we swallow all that and wait, and then we get another 3 years, we get another dousing. I think what we're seeing now is it started off perhaps as a garden hose, but the recent announcements and improvements are just coming in a rapid clip, more and more and more. So I think it's going to be a case of this sort of product could set up for a very, very long time, because Microsoft's got a lot of products to move into the cloud and then integrate together. In the wider space, obviously more and more resellers are going, more and more vendors are going to do that and start integrating together. So I personally think you can't really put a limit on it at this stage, because things are just changing so rapidly. You've just got to look at it and say, all I see is opportunity and I need part of it. So that's the way I would look at it. I don't think you can put any sort of limitations on it at this point in time.
Yeah, valid point, by the way, about sort of the streaming of features and functionality versus sort of the discrete 3-year life cycle. Repeating my favorite phrase again, folks, if you feel you're that kind of person, you should be attending, that you're doing it. Speaking of which, who should attend? So proactive IT pros, certainly thought leaders in the community, IT company owners, the geeks, the IT engineers, the administrators, and the technicians. So let's stop right there and talk for a second. What we're trying to do with the Office 365 Nation Conference this fall, and expanding our footprint, expanding our brand, expanding the conversation in a new community, is we want to welcome people from larger organizations. So, Small Business Server kind of defined itself, and I get that. Office 365 kind of scales the whole segment, all the way from enterprise through government and education, down to SMB. And by the way, SMB is a huge part of Office 365. That's not to degrade or belittle that, but if you're listening and you're an in-house IT professional, friend of mine at a accounting firm in Bellevue, Washington, about 300 users, you should be coming to this conference, because, first of all, the technical content is the technical content, number one. Number two, the business content is strategic in nature, whether you're a reseller or not. And then I guess I would offer number three, if you're in-house IT pro, you're hiring, Melanie, to your point, you are inevitably hiring Microsoft partners. You are hiring external resources with subject matter expertise, or I would say contingent staffing to help supplement that. But Melanie, does that make sense? I mean, I think it's a big tent, this conversation.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I think the good thing with you expanding this, and I'm very grateful that you are, is you're providing a platform of education and knowledge sharing for people that may be part of an in-house IT department, or someone who is an IT pro, or someone who is looking to get more involved and really understand what Office 365 is, because they're trying to make a business decision for their organization. So I think the good news is, with the segments that you have and the seminars that you have to match up, you've got a really good cross-representation of anyone that comes to the conference to be able to take something away, find a resource, make a solid business decision, get general information about 365, its offerings, from the basics down into the weeds, and really help people that plan on attending this conference get the knowledge they need to walk away with it.
As you were talking, maybe what I should do, boy, I'm leading a webinar, but darn it, as soon as I get off, I'm going to do Office365match.com, because maybe there's a matchmaking. maybe there's a speed dating function here somewhere. I don't know. Ginny, maybe we'll do that on Saturday night. I'm not going any further with that one. We have the sales professionals and the biz dev guys and gals, and really want to give a shout out to these individuals, and love to get the panelists' feedback on this. As I did the tour, here's what the Get Modern tour was: it was an invitation only. I'm going to say executive MBA peer group experience. So it was a half day. Yes, I had a slide deck. Good news is I got through the slide deck in about 90 minutes. And we had the rest of the time together, and it was the top 15 resellers per country. These are salespeople. These are suit and tie people, and it was just a very different conversation than we've had in the past with the SBS technical community and the MVPs and so on. And you know what? There's room for them in the tent as well. I mean, it's the closest thing I can describe it, and then I'd like to hear from Robert and Melanie on this new demographic, was this mirrored very closely to sales agents in telecom who sell for, what do you know, a commission that's commensurate with about what you make off Office 365. Robert, why don't you take it in terms of shifting demographics and the new crowd?
Well, I think what we're seeing, Harry, obviously, is that the product model has changed, and I think it's obviously something that people who sell recurring revenue have been familiar with, and typical people like your telecom execs. But to me, you mentioned before that the mobility was the key. The advantage, I suppose, the example I would give is I give presentations, and I ask so many people who are typically MSP clients, I said, okay, well, your MSP business probably is declining. You're finding it harder to make sales, on per user, because people will be saying, look, I'll just get a new PC. Where should you be shifting? And then I asked them, okay, I said, how many people in this room have a BYOD strategy for the mobility for their clients? And it's amazing that most of the room's empty, no hands are up. So again, I think the reality is the opportunity is there. It's just a matter of pivoting, and I think it's also being open to these sorts of things. I think perhaps in the community what's happened is we begin to rely off each other, fewer and fewer individuals to provide the information rather than being trailblazers. So I think that, again, that's where someone else has been able to come in, see the opportunity, systemise it, and then roll it out the door. So that's one of the big things, for example, that Office 365 will give you, is it can be used with PowerShell. And if you can script it and repeat it every time, why would you not do that? And I think, unfortunately, again, I would point to a lot of people who don't have the skill set, even the basic skill set in PowerShell. So if they haven't got that, then they're not going to be able to automate, then they're not going to see the profit advantages and be able to focus on the real meat of the opportunity. So again, to me, that's where the shifting demographics have come. And this is why the younger people who aren't, have perhaps not burdened with that thing come in and really embrace that. Because now the other opportunity I see is, as we're talking to you from all the way around the world, is it's now worldwide, it's now a global market. I can now sell my Office 365 services, my SharePoint services, my Link services to anybody in the world, and that to me is the greatest opportunity that's around.
Melanie, you recently were in Seattle. We had a chance to visit briefly. You were here for the Microsoft. I like to call it a super PAC, and they don't like me to call it that. It's a political trade association called VFI.
Yeah.
And but here's my question for you, and you're one of the few people that's seen me live in a suit and tie, and here's why. Microsoft asked me to up my game as I was dealing with the top 15 resellers. You need to kind of match the maturity of your audience. I mean, really, when you're in sales, that's not a bad idea to mirror the client.
Sure.
You're always well-groomed, and so I think you run more with that crowd. Can you describe who is this top sales executive, and are they nice?
They are very, very nice. I mean, I tend to, my term is they're one big ball of love to deal with, because the one thing that I will say, yes, they're very well groomed, and yes, they're very sharp, and they know, technically they know what PowerShell is. They know they should be using it. They're one of the first to adopt it and start getting involved in it. They really want to get ahead. The other thing that I particularly appreciate about that particular group is that they want to better themselves. They want to better their business, and they are always looking to fine-tune the way that they do it. So, they invest in training. They want to get their staff involved. They want to have that knowledge share and build that knowledge database so that one can help the other, and be able to cross over from one area to another. So they really do make an effort to try and ensure that they know what they're talking about. They're well-versed on their knowledge subject, and that their staff is, because their staff oftentimes is interfacing with the customer and has to provide that education in that strategic direction. So, yes, it might be the person at the top in the beginning, but their staff is just as well knowledged as they are when they're dealing with customers. And it's something that I just consider a very elite thing. I don't see it with all MSPs or a lot of IT people, but for the top 15, that's what the common thread that I can see across the board between all of them.
Excellent. Okay, so let me tell you what, let me wrap on my last 3 points, the rebooters. Here's my intention with that phrase. Got a blog up on my site that does a better job of explaining it, but you have to reinvent yourself. You get it. But maybe you don't want cloud, so maybe you think Microsoft is slamming cloud down my throat, or they're forcing me to go to cloud. That crowd. You should come to our conference anyways. I mean, if at a minimum, you should get behind enemy lines and understand what's going on. At a minimum, and at a maximum, you know what? You might just like it. Put your head into it for 3 days. Get immersed in Office 365, and then make a more informed decision, based a little bit less on political or theological rhetoric. The roadmappers, so this would be kind of the directions on Microsoft crowd for those listeners that know the well-regarded analyst firm and the newsletter. These are the analytical people. Well, think about it. They want to know what's Microsoft's near-term, mid-term, and long-term strategy. What's the roadmap? You're making strategic decisions for your either in-house IT use or your MSP practice, your consulting practice. And then finally, the disruptors, kind of self-explanatory, but they're just people that seek out disruption in markets, and they like to capitalize on it. I mean, if maybe a CNBC analogy would be a short seller in the financial markets is maybe one way to think about that. Let's move on. Some excitement. So we launched the site yesterday, and we've already had significant uptick from the community. And take a moment to read this. This individual's kind of hitting a conversation head on, and we're going to roll with it. We're authentic and I hope credible and engaged at SMB Nation. So we're not going to hide behind PR fluff on this one. We're going to put it right out there and talk about the elephant in the room. And quite frankly, what we've had over the last couple of years is some feedback that small business server is gone. We've been riding that horse hard, and maybe the content didn't make as much sense for the attendees. Quite frankly, some people viewed it as looking in the rearview mirror, investing backwards, and our whole idea is to invest forward. So this individual is just getting that elephant right out of the room for those of you on the call that maybe had the sentiment that we worked really hard on this year's conference, and we wanted to make sure we got a contemporary topic that is compelling for you, the attendee, to come to the conference and get some real value. And the deeper and deeper and deeper we got into it, the better we felt, because it's like, this is the start of a 10-year run. I mean, this is it, and it's kind of falling into everybody's lap. So thank you, George, for the honesty and the permission to post this up. Now we finally get to my main man, Dave Waldrop. So, Dave, I've had you in the wings for quite a while. Didn't mean to put you over in the the timeout chair, but here we are. Go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about your product, but I think also if you could talk at a little higher level about how Office 365 is sort of an opportunity platform for developers and ISVs and gap fillers. Welcome,
Sure.
Dave.
Yeah, thank you, Harry. So I've known Harry for a long time. I was with Microsoft for 18 years. Joined the company in '95, just before the launch of Windows 95, which was a magical time. I started, a number of different projects that a lot of you are familiar with. I ran the first partner conference, which is now called WPC. So I ran the first one of those down in Houston. Was part of the Direct Access team, which was Microsoft's first real formal program for helping partners that weren't certified, get benefit from Microsoft. And so I built the Microsoft partner websites, both the partner program website, Direct Access website. I was part of Microsoft's first attempt at cloud-based services for small business, which was called vCentral at the time, and that was an interesting experiment, a little ahead of a time, but we learned a lot. I also was part of a small team that tested what was at the time a radical concept at Microsoft, which was selling Office on a subscription basis. And so we had a very small team. We worked under the cloud of darkness within Microsoft to test the concept of not only selling Office as a subscription, but to do so through partners. And the result of that pilot project became a product called Office Live, then Office Live Small Business, and now it's known as Office 365. So very proud to have been part of the early efforts to build out that business model and to do so with partners at the forefront. Lots of experience. I was in the U.S. SMB team, started a program called Microsoft Community Connections while I was there. That program is still going strong, and had the honor of announcing MCC at one of Harry's SMB Nation conferences a few years ago. So, like I said, Harry and I, we've got a long track record together, very successful and very supportive. And so, had the opportunity to, as I left Microsoft last fall, to join a startup company. They contacted me within 3 weeks after I left Microsoft and said, hey, we've got this idea of building some apps, simple apps that help add functionality to Office 365. What do you think? And looked at what they were offering, and it absolutely resonated with me. And so here I am. I'm the president of a company now called Attached Apps. We're at the stage of launching our products and starting with our launch through partners. So timing is good for me and Harry to come back together again, once again, to work together to announce our products to the channel.
And Dave, if you don't mind me interjecting, I actually had a question pop up, very simple question from one of the listeners, but they were asking, quite frankly, a little context of why are you here, and I didn't do a very good job setting the table for you. Dave is one of the first sponsors of the Office 365 Nation Conference, about 100 days away, yada, yada, yada. And so as we prepared today's webinar, the thinking was, let's get a couple of the speakers, let's get a sponsor, and let's just put it out there and let people see what we're doing and make their own decision. But Dave, I need to interrupt that, sir, we appreciate your sponsorship, and now tell us about your solution.
Sure, yeah, so the opportunity is, as Harry said earlier, Office 365 looks like a great platform for companies to build on. And we recognize that fairly early on. Our founders recognized fairly early on. And so we looked in and said, what could we add to 365? What could we build on top of 365 that's not there that could enhance the functionality? And so what we're doing is we're starting out with relatively simple customer management, contact management, sales pipeline management sort of tools that are run natively with 365 in the background. They're hosted on Azure. And they're built and used and installed like an app. So it's a very, very simple install. It's HTML5 based, and so pretty simple functionality that is key. When you ask customers, what their number one pain points are, they always come back and say, I need help attracting, retaining, managing, and growing. A lot of these customers don't need or can't afford a full-blown CRM solution. They're using products like Outlook or Excel to manage their contacts, and so we saw an opportunity to develop some very simple apps that allow customers to leverage the power of 365 but also add some key functionality, and so hence we've got attached apps. Like I said, it's subscription-based, cloud-based, and more importantly, we're taking a partner-first strategy. So our key go-to-market strategy is to work through partners to enable you to offer our products out, add our products to your solutions, rather than trying to sell them directly, because we recognize that partners are the key to the SMB customer segment. And so it's an exciting time. Microsoft is very supportive of what we're doing because we're filling in some functionality gaps for 365. And so working very closely hand in hand with Microsoft and of course with partners like yourselves.
And that's a whole other webinar. In fact, Dave and I yesterday were starting to lay out the calendar, so there will be a series of webinars that are twofold. I mean, one is to learn about the attached app solution and the opportunity, but also from an educational point of view to help people understand Office 365, in my own words, is a development platform where you can come up with a better mousetrap and be a gap filler, do something Microsoft doesn't do. And Dave, if you don't mind me asking, I think you said that recently the new CEO at Microsoft is, in his public speeches, has commented that he's directing Microsoft to embrace third-party developers and solution providers. I think you said it better than myself, but I mean, all of a sudden the door is open. Is that right?
Absolutely. It's been a really good transformation. Satya Nadella, and when I mentioned Decentral, I actually worked for Satya back in Decentral days. So he's got good grounding in not only SMB but also in the partner community. And one of the things that Harry said the other day was, Satya came out and said, look, we recognize we have some feature gaps, especially in Office 365, which is their most important product. And he said, we're going to focus on filling those gaps, but we're not going to do it ourselves. We're going to go find partners and support them to help them fill these key functionality gaps. And so, we are, as attached apps, I mean, we're solidly in the middle of that road because we're helping fill in some missing functionality gaps in 365. Our products are hosted on Azure, so we help sell sort of more Azure services into the SMB space. And of course, we're an ISV partner for Microsoft, and so it's gratifying to see the company continuing to recognize the importance of partners like ourselves, and to pivot the company to focus on providing more support for partners like ourselves.
Yeah, and what I would say for some of the listeners on the webinar is imagine, guys, it's really unbelievable. Jeff Middleton launched SBS Migrations at the 2004 SMB Nation Conference at the Red Lion in downtown Seattle. I mean, that 10 years ago, 10 years plus. And imagine if Microsoft had this attitude of integrating the SBS migration kit into the SBS product. They didn't, and it's not their fault. It was just, I mean, it is what it is. And Jeff went on to do very well as an independent software vendor and kind of be, just outside the chain link fence and providing this solution. But that's the difference, is 10 years later, they're actively seeking to embrace ISVs and OEMs. So I'm going to move on. We always want to, watch our time a little bit here. Quick site tour, and we'll have Melanie and Robert talk about what they intend to speak on. And then, folks, I think we'll get you back to the salt mine on time. So bear with me. There we go, folks. Melanie, can you see the screen, the fall conference site? Okay, thank you very much. So we have fall2014.smbnation.com. Folks, it's a traditional site for a conference. It's the 411, the who, why, when, where, how, and so on. So it is on late September at the Microsoft Conference Center. We have the proverbial 12 reasons to attend, the little promo video. Love to have you kick over and check it out now. By the way, is anyone watching the World Cup soccer? Is that game over? I'm a little busy with my day job. Any of my panelists, can you give me an updated score? Should be close. With that said, I'll just quickly, and I'm using a touch device, so this is really cool. I'm just touching my screen. We have the details page. We have the sessions page broken up by business and technical, as always. The community page will represent the sponsor speeches. And so, Melanie, let's start with business, and let's go down to what you, I, and Carl Palachuk are basically pulling off between more or less BS 105 through BS 108, excuse me, we dropped the S. we're upping our game this round. Okay, it's now just called B, not business speak or BS, but the B. Melanie, you're part of the teaching team, and I guess the idea was to kind of have a peer group collaborative environment. You always have a better way of expressing this, so darn it, what are we trying to do?
Well, I think at this point, we have a lot of people that are still trying to figure out what that Office 365 model and landscape looks like for them when they've been in a traditional server role, throughout their entire career. And how do you make that transition? What does that look like? But the twist to this particular hour is, instead of myself and Harry and Carl trying to, give you information, we're going to provide some guidance with information, but also make it more of a pure style, where those that have questions and those that have answers that have made that transition can get together and help one another out. So it's really becoming more self-serving to the person that's going to be in that room to be able to get their answers that they need, with a little bit of nudging and guidance from Harry, myself, and Carl facilitating that.
Excellent, and I'll provide another reference for some of the people on the call. So at the original SMB Nation in 2003 in Indianapolis, Susan Bradley, also known as the SBS Diva, and by the way, she writes a fantastic column now for Windows Secrets newsletter. I mean, she has really elevated in the industry. She's an MVP, and on the Friday night, you guys, this is a funny story. I mean, our first conference, it was couple of credit cards, 2 kegs, and I put my name down for 2 ballrooms at a hotel in Indianapolis, and it just happened. There's a little bit of Woodstock to it. People just came, and on Friday night, we were so poor. How poor were we? We were so poor that we didn't have the huge vendor parties and the live rock and roll and so on. So Susan put basically combined the 2 ballrooms, put over 100 chairs in a circle, and it was just like this Native American potluck endeavor where they have what they call a talking stick, and you can only talk when you have the stick, and literally the stick was the microphone, and so the microphone went around the circle for several hours, and people just wanted to talk about SBS. share, ask questions. I'm stuck. What do I do? And that's part of what I'm drawing upon is that same sentiment that we saw at that time. And I think that's exactly where we're at with Office 365. So now you know where I'm coming from. Robert, let me click over. Let me touch. I love touch. That is so cool. Melanie, I touch my second monitor and it doesn't work.
I'm going to leave that one alone for now.
Okay. Robert, I've got your, there we go. I've got your courses up on the screen. So maybe if you want to give a shout out to your niche in SharePoint, but what are you trying to do by covering off on some of the lesser known features of Office 365?
What we're seeing, Harry, is most traditional resellers only think of Office 365 as a platform for email. They only see it as a platform for basic email. You just send and receive. And you know, if anything's a commodity today, it's email. Now, Office 365 is a far broader product than that. And we've had something like SharePoint and SBS since its inception. And again, you find very few people using it. And Microsoft has always been touting its opportunity in SharePoint. And it still seems to be a bit of a something that's left behind. So I think that's one of the things. SharePoint still is there. The opportunity is there. If you have SharePoint skills, you can take it forward, and now you can grow it into a developer platform. You can also do it as a productivity solution. And you know what? When it comes to storing files, but traditional file server, that's Microsoft's solution, is SharePoint in one way, shape, or form. I think the big stepping forward that we're going to see is the integration of social. So we went through a period where we had Twitter, Facebook, and all these other things, and now we're seeing that make its way into the enterprise, and a lot of businesses need help and assistance with that. So there's, again, a big push, a big opportunity around Yammer. A lot of Microsoft's traditional email newsletters and lists and that are moving to a Yammer background, and again, it's just a matter of getting in and getting involved. And you know what, if you become an expert or if you become knowledgeable in it, you can sell that to customers. And again, that's another differentiator, is there isn't really another product like Yammer that integrates with a service like email. And things like the Office Graph and Project Oslo, you're going to see that grow around business intelligence and information being pushed to you. And, you know, the last two there obviously is PowerShell. PowerShell is, you know, if you're a techie and you don't do PowerShell, then I don't, because, you know, these days you probably aren't a techie, because that's really the way forward for on-prem and also in the cloud. And again, another one of the unfortunately forgotten technologies that gives you an easy differentiator is Link. So in my experience, the easiest way to sell Office 365 is to show somebody Link and implement Link, because it has next to no impact on their business, and you're going to get their attention straight away. So I think part of it is everybody knows email, everybody knows Exchange pretty much, but you know what? These other products provide you a whole world of opportunity to wrap services and, importantly, stamp your individual mark on this and go to customers and be different from every other supplier out there.
Cool. So, folks, it all starts at fall.smbnation.com. We're almost at time, so let me hop back to my deck. Be sure to go ahead and sign up for the conference. Look at the logistics page in terms of your accommodations and travel. You're always welcome to call me personally at SMB Nation. The phone number's on the site. I am at extension 103. Happy to take your call. We're a community and love to answer your questions. So with that said, we are at the wrap-up, and we're exactly at time. Dave Waldrop is reporting up on chat that the U.S. lost to Germany 0-1, but they still advanced. So, Dave, thanks for that information. Let me just double-check the chat feature if I have any unanswered questions, or is the deck clear? It looks like the deck is clear, and we're exactly at time. So, folks, once again, the 12th Annual SMB Nation Fall Conference has the theme of the Office 365 Nation Conference. It's a focused 3-day boot camp, a deep dive, an immersion on the technical side, as you saw, and then on the business side. And it's a big tent, so it's not just SMB resellers, partners, and consultants, but I'd really like to see some IT pros from different walks of life attend, from the enterprise, the government, education on down, and we're gonna build this community on rock and roll. So I'll leave it at that. Panelists, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to join us, and everybody have a great day, and hey, have a fantastic 4th of July weekend in the U.S. coming up next week. No webinar. We'll see you in 2 weeks, and that will be with Zenstra, the hybrid server for Office 365, and we're going to key up a conversation right before WPC. So thank you very much. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you, Harry.